know, I sat down to do a whole crazy long explanation on what journaling is and how to journal, and I sat down and wrote a script. I have a whole middle note about it, and I realized that that's just simply not my style. And this is more of where I'm at with it. First and foremost, when it comes down to journaling, I feel like you need three things. You need a pen, you need a notebook, and you need some time to write. And most importantly, I think the most important part of those three is the time, because you need to figure out time to sit down and actually write. What to write about, I mean, that's something for another subject. And I think that if you look at my channel, you see that it's based heavily on, stationery and pens and things of that nature. Even going back to looking at a lot of things that were dealing with video games, like very early on in my channel, it doesn't need to be expensive. And the thing is like my journaling setup is catered, and it's my personal preference. Like, I prefer using fountain pens. I prefer using Japanese stationery notebooks and things like that. So that's just my thing. And as far as like my time is concerned, I don't necessarily have a lot of time to write at home, but I do write a lot at work and on my lunch break, like I am right now, because I have to fit it in when I can. I have to get in where I fit in, basically, right? But as far as that goes, that's really all you technically need. The next thing we need is, like, what are you writing about? And that was something that, like, I struggled with when I first started journaling some years ago. I got too caught up in the gear aspect of journaling and what it meant to have a specific pen or a cool notebook and all of that stuff. And I ended up buying not a lot of stuff, but just some junk things that I didn't necessarily use, and they didn't benefit me for what I was trying to accomplish. What I ended up doing was I simplified my setup, and I found journals that I like, but I still question, like, what am I writing about? And I followed journal prompts for a few years, using Brainstorm. I followed journal prompts online. Don't turn the light. I've just looked up different types of prompts and things like that, right? But mostly, as far as I'm concerned, I do a lot of free writing. And when it comes to free writing, I just, whatever's on my mind, and I'll just sit back and I'll have a conversation and just say, hey, what's going on today? And just go from there. Because at this point, I don't necessarily need a prompt, or I don't do the bullet journals and things of that nature. So for me personally, I just free write. Last, I think one of the most important things is the why, right? The why is whatever it is you feel like you want your why to be when it comes to journaling. And you don't necessarily have to explain it to anybody. You don't necessarily have to, have a rhyme or reason for it. If you choose the bullet journal and you're creative in that fashion, then so be it. Me, on the other hand, I'm not. I know what type of journaling works for me, and I understand that I'm not this super creative person where, like, I have washi tape and I can block out my day and I can write those time blocks down and things like that. I'm not that type of person where I can do that creatively. Like, it needs to be, that type of journaling for me has to be more like function over a form, I would say. So I just use the calendar and my reminders app on my phone for that. Like, it just needs to function, it needs to work. And I take that type of approach when it comes to journaling as well, that, like, it just needs to work for me. I don't necessarily need a super complicated setup. I don't need it to be super flashy and pretty. My notebooks are all black. My pens are what they are. And, I don't have to have a specific pen. I don't have to have the cool color Sailor Pro Gear Slim. I don't need that. I just need my fountain pen, and my notebook. I am very specific about it though because of the feel of the paper, but I think that's something that's like a personal preference again. I don't I'm not necessarily fussy about it to a sense where like I get caught up into what that looks like and how that process works for me. So I think when you're journaling, I think that keeping it as simple as possible is something that we all should look for, or at least that's what I recommend, is just keeping your journaling setup as simple as possible. And looking towards books and other YouTube channels as well as mine to determine, you know, where is a good starting point for you, because journaling looks different for everybody. There is no right way or wrong. There's no right or wrong way to do it. If you're just choosing to write, if you're choosing to, take pictures or, whatever works for you, I think there's plenty of information out there to just scour the internet and find what works for you. And I think that's what I ended up having to do, is I didn't take anybody's word as gospel. I just looked at it and said, hey, I like this aspect of this person's or what they're saying to do, but I also want to blend this with what I like to do and my simplification of things, because I don't like to complicate things, right? I like to use the easiest, the most simplest solution possible. So when it came to journaling for me, that's all I needed to do was just pen, paper, and time. And I think those are like the three pillars of journaling: just pen, paper, and time. So I guess, like, in conclusion, I just learned to not force myself to do something that like I was very uncomfortable with doing, and I've also just learned to just journal the way that I like to do it. And I think that's my message for the beginner's guide to journaling, or just the guide to journaling anyway. Is just to write it how you feel. Go with what feels right. If you like to use the Moleskine notebooks, then that's cool. If you like to use the Midoris or the Tomo Rivers or the Galen Leathers or even the pocket notebooks from Walmart, then go with what you feel. Like, don't get too caught up on the gear. And I think that on YouTube we get too caught up on the gear aspect of journaling, and that's what holds a lot of people back from journaling, and that's what gives people paralysis, because they just see that there's so much gear out there and they feel like you have to have this particular brand of washi tape or this particular brand of notebook and this color ink and all of these pens and these different types of stationaries and all of that type of stuff. And I didn't want to get too caught up on the gear aspect of it, because I have reviews and I do, to a certain extent, enjoy the gear aspect of writing. But I think that when it comes to writing, just do it. Just sit down, find some time, make time to do it, and just sit down and write. And that's my message to you guys. Don't overcomplicate things.